Morning class. Again, this is PLARHG History and Geography. Again, my name is Jonathan. I am your teacher for this course. Very exciting news last night. We had a historical day last night. The Jays won, so go Jays go. And we have a brand new Prime Minister. Yes, we have a brand new Prime Minister. His name is Justin Trudeau. This is pretty significant and it relates to our course because throughout our history portion of this course, we have talked about many great Canadian Prime Minister, such as Wilfrid Laurier, Mackenzie King, Pierre Trudeau, Brian Mulroney. But now we have Justin Trudeau, the son of Pierre Elliott Trudeau. As you remember Pierre Trudeau during the 60s and his Quiet Revolution, his War Measures Act during the 60s. Yes, this is his son. This is his son, Justin Trudeau. He is a part of the Liberal Party, and yes, he is our new Prime Minister. So I want to thank everyone who was able to get out and vote. I know a lot of Canadian citizens wanted change, and we made change. So good on ya. And today we are starting week 7 of our course. Okay, this is class 1 of week 7 because this is a Tuesday. So we have 2 more weeks after this week. Okay, there's 2 more weeks after this week. So again, please continue to work on your assignments. Get them to me as soon as you can. That way I can mark it, and that way by the end of the term, you can be able to write your tests. Again, okay? Just a recap, I post all my lessons on my YouTube channel at jhillwasa. You can also find me on my Facebook page at jhillwasa as well. You can also go to the NNEC archive page and download my lessons in the MP3 format and just listen to my lessons as well. So, yeah. Okay. Are there any questions at the moment before we get started? Again, we are in our second half of the course where we're looking at geography. Even though this is a PLARHG History and Geography, history portion is now completed. We're going to continue on with the geography portion, the second half of the course. Where last class we started looking at lesson 5. Lesson number 5, physical geography. This is the last lesson for this course. Okay, there are 5 lessons in total in terms of PLARHG History and Geography, and we are at lesson number 5, and this is the last one. Okay. Again, our learning goals for today. Again, we are going to look at the biosphere. We're going to talk about different types of rocks. We're going to talk about different types of trees. We're going to look at functional regions. We're going to look at the Niagara escarpments, and maybe touch a bit on the ecozones of Canada if we have time. Okay, so again, lots of topics going to be covered today. We're going to continue where we left off last class, but before we do that, I'm going to take some time and review some of the materials that we talked about last class on physical geography. Again, when we talk about physical geography, we're talking about topics such as landforms, regions, trees, longitude, latitude, conservation, protections, types of rocks, weather, climate, global warming, etc. Okay, this is just some of the topics that we have already touched upon. Some we will be getting to later on as the term progresses. But right now, let's go back a bit, do a bit of review, and see what we had talked about last class. Here we go. Alright, so yeah, we started talking about physical geography. Okay, remember that we have finished human geography. Now we're looking at physical geography. Okay, so physical geography is a study of natural features of the Earth's surface, especially in its current aspect, including land formation, land regions, the environment, climate, current, distribution, movement, plants, animals, and humans. Okay, all these topics relate to physical geography. Okay, the study of natural features of the Earth's surface, especially in its current aspects. Again, okay, we're talking about different creatures, birds, reptiles, different animals, human, insects. Talk about landforms, okay? Talk about water. Why is there water in this particular area? Why are there lakes, rivers, glacier, oceans? Okay, the land. Okay, why is this particular area have lots of mountains? Why are there hills, valleys, plains? Okay, then we talk about trees, different types of trees, why do they grow in certain areas, plants, flowers, grass, etc. Okay, this is all about physical geography. Okay, lots of topics. Again, minor class, again, there's lots of definition, so make sure we know these definitions. Okay, moving along, we also talked about regions. Okay, so don't get too confused about regions. I know it may sound confusing, but it's pretty straightforward. Again, region is defined as a set of defined characteristics. Okay, region is a particular area that has similar characteristics to one another. That's why we classify it as a region. Some examples that we can classify as a region is that they may have natural boundaries, such as mountains or rivers, or any particular characteristic that stands out. Okay, these are imaginary lines that divide up territories. Okay, just no set boundaries. Okay, they're just imaginary lines that divide up these territories that we call regions. Okay, so for example, when looking at a map, uh, imagine a map of like Canada. Okay, so on British Columbia and Alberta, we have the mountains, the west coast, that's a particular regions. Then we got Manitoba, Saskatchewan, known as the prairies, because they're flat, right? Really good for agriculture and farming. Then we got Ontario and Quebec, which is known as the central Canada, because we're kind of in the middle. And all the provinces out east, Newfoundland, PI, and such, are known as the East Coast. Known as the East Coast. Then lastly, all the territories up north are known as Northern Canada. Okay, that's particular regions of Canada. Okay, for example, I also had a map shown last class about, blank map of Ontario, where we can define regions based on Northern Ontario, Southern Ontario, okay, and such. We also talked about longitude and latitude briefly. Again, we'll talk more in depth about longitude and latitude near the end of this lesson. So just a reminder, longitude. Okay, so imagine a map of the world. There are imaginary lines that goes up and down, east to west, side to side. Okay, these are imaginary lines that divides up into areas or regions of the world. So lines that goes sideways or from east to west or west to east are known as longitude. Okay, longitude. And those imaginary lines that goes up and down or north and south are known as latitude. Latitude. Okay, again, this is just brief touch on this topic. Again, we'll talk more about longitude and latitude near the end of the lesson. Awesome. So we got Ruth. Good morning, Ruth. I know you're participating online. So thank you, Ruth. And we also talked about regional diversity. Again, there is a question on assignment 12 that talks about name Canada's 3 regions. Okay, so I'm talking about particularly this particular slide in terms of regional diversity. So there's three. Uh, one, climate region. Two, cultural regions. And three, topographical regions. Okay, these are three regional diversity in terms of Canada. Okay, so for example, climate, Canada again is unique in terms that we have many different unique climates. We have, northern Canada, which is our territories. We got the Yukon and Northwest Territory, where they're primarily always cold. We got the East Coast and the West Coast, where they experience a lot of rainfall. Southern Ontario, where they have hot, humid summers. Okay, and then we got Northern Ontario, where we have long, cold winters, for examples. Okay, so this is what makes Canada unique in terms of regional diversity, as we have lots of different climate, lots of different seasons that impact Canada, depending on where you live in terms of Canada. Then we got number two, cultural regions. So we have lots of different immigrants, lots of people with different cultural backgrounds that live in Canada. You got people from Asia, Europe, Far East Asia, Southern America, Africa, you name it, everywhere. Okay. Also have indigenous populations all over Canada as well. Again, in terms of indigenous population, they're just not just one particular culture. We may have, the Métis, the Inuit, the Ojibwe, the Creed. Okay, there's tons. Okay, this relates back to cultural diversity. Not just one, but there's lots of different types. And lastly, we got what makes Canada unique is this is tropical graphical regions, which means that we have lots of different landforms. Again, we talked about some of them in past. We talked about how out west in British Columbia we have mountains. Okay, this is unique. We don't have mountains in particular in terms of Ontario. But in terms of Canada, we have them out west. We have tons of lakes. We got the Great Lakes. We got the prairies, which is flat land. We got the lowland. We got the Arctic regions up north, which is really primarily cold. We have different populations. We have, big cities, urban cities, booming cities. We got a rural area good for farming. We got First Nation population. All this makes Canada unique in terms of regional diversity. And scrolling down, again, more information. I touched upon climate and weather. And we'll go more in depth about what is climate and what is weather today. You will be able to define climate and weather. You'll be able to understand the difference in terms of those two terminology and what they mean. Again, we went over assignment 11. Pretty short assignment. Again, a lot of terminology. Again, what is physical geography? What is a region? Name three of Canada's different regions. Why do you think Canada has so many climates? Okay, all pretty straightforward in terms of assignment 11 out of 9 marks. Any questions about what we touched upon last class? Okay. So I think this is where we left off last class, where we talked about landform regions. Again, class, I'm on page 39 of the textbook. So if you have your textbook in front of you, I'm on page 39. So again, I think we talked about this last class briefly. We talked about landform regions. Okay, so a landform region is an area of land that has the same major surface features. Okay, an area of land that has the same major surface features. And the one landform region that we talked about is the Canadian Shield. The Canadian Shield. Good morning, Fort Hope. Thank you for calling in and participating. So who do we have online at Fort Hope Learning Center this morning?
Delilah.
Delilah. Good morning, Delilah. Thank you. Is anyone else there? Is Knight there?
Just me?
Just you, Delilah? Perfect. Okay, thank you, Delilah. We also got Jim. Jim is also participating with us as well. So good morning, Jim. Okay. Again, as you call in and as you participate, please shout out your name so that I can keep a record and note of who's online, who's participating, and and if you can tell me which community you're from as well, that would be great as well. As I get to learn all my students' name and which community you're from. So back to the Canadian Shield. The Canadian Shield, yes, the Canadian Shield is the biggest landform region in Canada. It makes up about 50% of Canada, so pretty big area. If you can see my smartboard screen, it's the area covering green. It's a pretty big chunk. So what makes the Canadian Shield unique? Again, it's pretty big. Like I said, it takes up 50% of the area in Canada. Has, from the East Coast, Quebec, parts of Ontario, um, parts of Manitoba, and it extends all the way up north towards the Northwest Territory as well. So pretty big chunk in terms of the Canadian Shield. Okay, so we talked about the Canadian Shield. It doesn't have good soil. Okay, it has poor soil, which means it's not good for farming. It is not good for settlements. Okay, this is the negative side of the Canadian Shield. Again, it has poor soil, um, which is not good for farming. It discourages farming, and it doesn't have extensive settlements. So not many people live in these particular areas, as they are part of like northern Canada as well. However, however, what makes the Canadian Shield unique is that it has rich minerals known as the storehouses and produces among other minerals. Okay, so lots of different minerals and metals are found in this particular area of the Canadian Shield. So for example, copper, lead, nickel, zinc, and uranium. Okay, you'll see a question about the Canadian Shield pop up on your assignment. So again, what makes the Canadian Shield unique is that it has rich minerals and metals such as copper, lead, nickel, zinc, and uranium. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Questions, comments, thoughts on the Canadian Shield? All right. All right, let's get into some new material, new content for today's lesson. Oh, I got one more slide before that. Again, we talked about Sudbury, Ontario, known as a mining city. Lots of copper, nickel are mined in this area. Again, I got images of uh, a mining operation, a site in Sudbury. Have you been to Sudbury? You know that it has this tourist attraction known as the Giant Nickel. This is known for mining nickel. Alright, this is the slide I'm looking for. Okay, so now we're going to talk about glaciers and encarcements. Glaciers and encarcements. You may have heard of glaciers before. You may have not heard of glaciers before, but that's okay. So what happened was that, think back millions and millions of years ago, um, like millions of years ago, there was a period in time in history known as the Ice Age. The Ice Age. It was a period where, major parts of North America, primarily in Canada, where Canada as a whole was covered in thick sheets of ice, known as glaciers. Okay, so imagine a map of Canada again. Uh, Imagine Canada completely filled with thick layers of ice and snow. Okay, this is period of the Ice Age, which happened millions and millions of years ago. As a result of the Ice Age, we have something called the glaciers. Glaciers are, again, thick sheets of ice. Due to their glacier's impact, and as glacier melted and retreated away, as the Ice Age period disappeared or went away, they left, you know, they made impacts in terms of the landforms, which curves out valleys. That's why we have valleys today, which becomes lakes. Okay, so you may be thinking to yourself, oh, why do we have lakes in certain areas? Or how did they become lakes? Well, one impact is the glaciers and the Ice Age impact. They left soil deposits, which becomes hills and ridges. Again, another impact of glaciers as they melt away and disappear. Also, due to glaciers, they have created encarcements. And you'll see this term come up again. Encarcements are commonly found, and they are cliffs that display a transitional between different rock formations. Okay, that also frequently form faults in the landform. So areas that are higher in terms of elevation compared to others. Okay, so this is what the impact of glaciers due to the Ice Age have created. They have created encarcements, and there are cliffs that displays a transitional between different rocks formation. Could be formed by faults, so area with that are higher in elevation compared to others. Again, you see on a map, you see North America and Canada covered in tons of ice, known as the Ice Ages. Picture of glaciers right here. All this creates, cliffs, valleys, lakes, which impacts, the land we live on today. Why some areas are higher than others, and such, which leads to my next slide. Okay, so you can see my smartboard screen on Bridget. You can see that this is an image of a land in the Niagara region, how an area is higher in terms of elevation, and another area that is lower in terms of elevation, in terms of other. Just an example of encarcements. Okay, this is the impact of glacier as they ran away or melted away. Okay, encarcement is a steep slide feature in a rift valley which develops when faulting is accompanied by upward or downward movement of adjoining parts of a crust. Again, you can see this image which illustrates, higher elevation, lower elevation of a particular land. Again, we got another image of Niagara Escarpment area. Again, it illustrates area that is higher in terms of elevation and lower in terms of elevation compared to another. Again, I'm on page 42 of the textbook. So if you have your textbook in front of you, you'll see that there's an article called "What is the Niagara Escarpment?" Okay, I'm not gonna go through all the details in that page, but what I do want to highlight and point out about this particular article, where it talks more about escarpments and how it's created. So escarpment, again, it's created due to the period of the Ice Age, due to glaciers retreating, melting away as they melt away. Again, this happens millions of years ago. Okay, created due to sediments and erosions have created this very complex landforms. Okay, how a particular area may have, more hills compared to others. So these landforms very complex. Escarpment is not a geological fault, but it is a pusta. Okay, another thing I want to point out about this particular article is that over time, ancient oceans erode away. The soft base of the shell moves more quickly than the hard cap rock. So basically, what I really want to point out from this article is that, again, escarpments are created due to glaciers. There are very complex landforms. They're created due to erosion, how they erode away, which created this very complex landform. Again, it's just all illustrated on page 42 of your textbook. Again, I'm not going to go through all the details of this article again, but make sure you please go back and read it. There is a question on your next assignment about it. Again, it outlines more history, the dynamics of the Niagara Escarpments period. Okay. Okay. So now we are going to talk about the Biosphere Reserve. The Biosphere Reserve. Again, this is on the next page of your textbook, on page 43. So last we talked about the Niagara Escarpments, for example, is a unique area, again, that was created due to glacier, due to erosions and the impact of the landform that took place tons and millions of years ago, which make this particular area and other areas around Canada very, very unique. And as a result of that, we need to protect it and we need to conserve it so that it doesn't get damaged or impact the live experience of humans or other wildlife in that particular area. Again, so the biosphere, again, it recognizes a particular area based on protection of the particular ecozone and its surrounding development. Again, like I said, for example, the Niagara Escarpment is a particular ecozone area, which is really unique, which can be in danger at times as time progresses. So as a result, we need to protect it and we need to reserve this particular area. So there are three things in terms of protecting and developing this particular ecozone so that it becomes stronger and it's still preserved years later on. So there's three things that needs to be done. So number one, it is called the core area. Okay, the core area, which is like the area that needs to be protected. So for example, it's protecting our natural features. So for example, a hill, a valley, a river, a stream, or particular wetland or forest. So imagine you want to protect something. In this case, we're talking about the Niagara escarpments. But for example, you want to protect a particular wetland or particular forest. This is known as the core area, a particular area that we wanted to protect. And I noticed that Danny is trying to control my smartboard screen. Good morning, Danny. Over at Casablanca's. Thank you, Danny. That's okay. Don't worry about it. It happens all the time. Again, we talk about the core area. So we'll pretend you want to protect a particular area, a stream, a valley, a wetland. This is a particular area that we are going to design and protect. Okay, so core area. So that's number one. Put a little one beside. Okay, area number two is known as the buffer zone. The buffer zone. This is the area that's just outside of the core area. So the buffer zone is basically where our development activities to protect and conserve the area that is in need. So for example, like I said, your wetland or your forest is endangered. We're now developing areas outside that particular core area in order to protect and conserve that particular place. Okay, so now we know what we want to protect. Now we're with development activities, a resource management plan in order to protect that area. And lastly, number three is known as the transitional zone. Okay, there are three phases. Lastly is the transitional zone. The transitional zone is basically the zone that is outside, the greater zone outside the buffer zone, where local landowners are encouraged to help and cooperate in resource management. So now we are engaging citizens outside or living in this particular area to get involved, help spread the message that we need to promote this area. Okay, we're encouraging landowners to participate in proper resource management and development. Okay, this is the biosphere. The biosphere. Again, if I scroll down, I have a little image, maybe hopefully illustrate it. So this could be, again, a wetland that we want to protect, or forest, or anything that we need to protect or conserve later on. Okay, so we have the core area, okay, which is the outside area that we need to protect. Then we have the buffer zone, where we are developing activities, a management plan that needs to be done in this particular area. So another boundary outside the core area. And the last area is known as the transitional zone, where we impact settlements, humans who are living in this particular area to get involved, help spread the word, get their cooperation in terms of protecting this particular area that is in need of protection, or that is in danger of being wiped out or extinct, for example. Okay, this is known as the biosphere. The biosphere. Okay. the same format. It can be taking place again. We were protecting a river or stream or valley. In this case, we're protecting the Niagara Escarpment. Okay. Are there any questions on the biosphere? Again, so make sure we understand and know 3 areas of the biosphere, their names, what they do. Again, you'll see it again. So I'm going to put a star. I already have put star. I'm going to put another star beside it, indicate that it's important that you'll see it again. Excellent. Okay. So now I'm going to kind of switch gears a bit. Getting on page 45 of the textbook. We're going to talk about types of rocks. Types of rocks. Very unique topic. Rocks. So I'm pretty sure we have all seen rocks. If I had a classroom, I would bring in different types of rocks to pass it around. But rocks. But in terms of our planet and our Earth and what we lived on, there are 3 types of rocks. 3 types of rocks. Igneous rock, sedimentary rock, and metamorphic rock. Again, I'm not sure if you have heard this term before, but 3 types of rocks are igneous rock, sedimentary rock, and metamorphic rock. Again, you'll see a question on types of different rocks on your assignment. So I'm underlining it here. Put a little star beside it. Okay, so 3 types of rocks that we're going to learn about. So number 1, the first one, igneous rock. Why don't we say it all with me? Igneous rock. An igneous rock. Okay, so how is an igneous rock created or formed? Well, they are formed either underground or above ground. Okay, if they're underground, they are formed when melted hot rocks are created from magma. So magma would cool off and become an igneous rock. So imagine a volcano. A volcano may have erupted, and as the magma cools off, they are known as an igneous rock. And that is how an igneous rock is created and formed. Okay, so they are formed either underground or above ground. So magma underneath ground traps small pockets, which becomes igneous rock, or they are formed above ground when a volcano erupts and the lava flows around and then cools off, and as the lava cools off, it becomes an igneous rock. Okay, that is how an igneous rock is formed. Igneous rock. Okay. Second rock we are going to talk about is sedimentary rock. Sedimentary rock. Sedimentary rock, how it's formed is that now we have an igneous rock, but that igneous rock is now broken up by wind or water, which breaks down the rock. So imagine a rock that's underneath the ocean or the lake, or after time, pressure from the water pushes and breaks down the rock. But now a sedimentary rock, if you have a sedimentary rock, if you've seen a sedimentary rock, it has layers in it, which illustrates that it's been pushed down by pressure of the water and such, which is breaking down. Okay, that's how we have the sedimentary rock. Okay, so these are half layers. That's how we distinguish sedimentary rocks. So layers on top of one another. And heat and pressure push down and breaks down the rock. And that's how we have a sedimentary rock. And the last rock we want to talk about is the metamorphic rock. Metamorphic rock. How is that is formed is that now we have either igneous rock or sedimentary rock. One of those two types of rock are breaking down again by heat or pressure over time and returns back into its original form, known as igneous rock or sedimentary rock, which in this case we call it a metamorphic rock. Okay? So if I scroll down, we see different types of rocks and their names and how they're created. Okay, but I know that may be a bit confusing, but what I did to further and break that down was that I created a slide known as the rock cycle. Yeah, you won't see this in your textbook, but this is something I just created to help further illustrate and demonstrate your understanding. So this is the rock cycle. This is how rocks are created, and this is how rocks are formed. So again, we talked about magma, volcano, that lava, volcano cools off, which becomes an igneous rock. Okay, and that igneous rock is now breaking down by wind and water, which is created by layers at the bottom of the body of water. So again, it's broken down by wind and water, which is now known as a sedimentary rock. Again, and that sedimentary rock is breaking up due to heat and pressure, and as a result, it returns back into its natural form as a metamorphic rock, or something we call a metamorphic rock. And as that metamorphic rock cools and melts down, it turns into magma again, it cools off, and we have the rock cycle. Okay? I know that's a lot of information. Are there questions about anything about the rock types of rocks? Any questions? Again, we have 3 types of rocks. Again, so make sure we know the names of the types of rocks. Again, igneous rock, sedimentary rock, and a metamorphic rock. Again, you'll see go to assignment 12. So let's do that. So if you have your textbook, your workbook, your workbook has all your assignments. And let's turn to let's go to assignment 12. Assignment 12. Again, I'm going to take some time now to go over questions on assignment 12. So if you have assignment 12 in front of you, that'd be great. If you don't, that's okay. Assignment 12. So assignment 12, question number 1. Why is the Canadian Shield considered Canada's storehouse of metallic minerals? Okay, so again, we're talking about the Canadian Shield. So again, I gave you some examples as to how to start off these questions. Again, just a reminder, no jot notes, no one-word answer. Please always write in full, complete sentences. No capitals, periods, comma. Lots of details provided. That way I can understand and give you a better mark for these questions. Okay? Again, nothing new there. Question number 2. How were glaciers responsible for landforms? Again, so you can go back towards the glacier section. Question number 3. What is an escarpment and describe how it was formed? Question number 4. From the article, what is the Niagara escarpment? Provide 2 causes for the erosion of this landform. Again, that is in that article. It's near the very, very top. Okay, if I'm looking for 2 causes for the erosion of that landform. Question number 5 deals with biosphere. So what is a biosphere? So we need to explain what it is. They need to name the 3 zones of this reserve and give a description of each. Extra space is provided on the next page. Okay, so you need to explain what is a biosphere. So what is it? What is its goal? What is its purpose? What is it meant to do? Why was it set up? They need to name the 3 zones that we talked about. Okay, name the 3 zones and give a description of what each one is. And then we got name the 3 types of rocks. So types of rocks, what we just talked about. And explain how each one is formed. Again, if you are not sure or don't remember, it's all in your textbook. So again, you need to write the name of the rock, so its name, and describe how it's formed. And that is assignment number 12. Questions on assignment number 12? Again, it's pretty straightforward. Again, it asks for a lot of terminology, definitions, nothing too complicated. Again, there's no surprises. If you have been following along and paying attention throughout my lessons, you should do pretty well. Again, if you need any help or any clarifications or need me to rephrase anything, please let me know. I'm here to help. Okay, some questions may be worded funny, but please make sure you read each question carefully and answer what is being asked and provide with lots of details. Okay? I'm gonna touch upon one more topic before we stop it for here for today. Okay, so one more. This is on your next assignment. Okay, so we're going to talk about a functional region. Again, we have talked lots about regions and what is a region, but now we're going to talk about a functional region. A functional region. Okay, so a functional region is a region defined by, often developed around a central or focal point. A region defined by use, often developed around a central, a center, or a focal point. So what does that mean? So basically, anything that stands out or is a center of a particular focus or point is considered a functional region. So for example, a park, a national park, or a provincial park can be known as a functional region. So here in Silico, we have the Ojibwe Provincial Park. That is an example of a functional region. Banff National Park in Alberta is an example of a functional region. Kekabeka Falls can be considered an example of a functional region. Okay, so a functional region is defined by a particular center or focal point. Okay, it stands out. Okay, so that is a functional region. And then we talked, then we jump a slide that we have weather and climate. So let's define those 2 terms quickly before we stop it today. So climate. What is a climate? What is weather? So climate is defined as the average of all weather condition over the entire year. Okay, so the average weather condition of the entire year. Whereas weather, what is weather? Well, weather is the condition of the atmosphere on a particular day-to-day basis. Okay, so in terms of climate, think of long-term. Okay, think of long-term conditions over a particular year or decades or centuries. Okay, the average weather, so long-term. Then weather is present, the day-to-day conditions in the atmosphere is known as weather. So weather could be what it's like outside today. So if I look outside my window today, I see lots of sun and a slight little breeze, and it's pretty chilly this morning. So that's some top of weather. Whereas climate, we know that here in Silicon, this particular month or time of year can be very, very cold, known as winter. So we should have snow coming soon, or any day now. That's weather and climate. So again, on my next slide, this is something that I just created for extra. It says the difference between weather and climate. So again, weather is defined as the day-to-day change in the atmospheric conditions, condition of the air in a particular place on a particular time. So what is it like outside? So when we talk about weather, it can include the temperature, sunny, cloudy, rainy, windy. This is what I talk about weather on a day-to-day basis. So it could change. Even though it's winter to coming up soon, it can still be pretty warm. So this is something to talk about weather. Whereas climate is the long-term pattern of weather. Okay, it happens over years, decades, even centuries. A long-term pattern. So the average weather of an area does not describe any particular event or day. Okay, so weather is short-term, climate is long-term. Again, you'll see on assignment 13, there will be a question on difference between weather and climate. This can just help further explain your understanding. Again, weather and climate is explained on page 45. Again, you'll need to define what is weather and what is climate again. And I am going to stop it here for today. So we're almost running out of time. But before I go, are there any questions? Again, thank you, Danny from Casablanca, for listening. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Delilah, over at Fort Hope, for calling in and listening. Again, if you have any questions, please let me know. Please continue to work on those assignments as the term wraps up and come close to an end. I want to make sure that everyone is able or is eligible to write their tests once the term is end, if you have been moving along. But again, please work at your own pace. I know everyone is at different pace in terms of this course. Some may still be working on PLARHG history. Some may be on pace with me geography. Some may are almost done geography. So please work at your own pace. Again, please let me know if you have any questions. Okay. Yes, and we'll pick it up where we left off next class on Thursday, where we'll continue looking at PLARHG geography, history geography, but geography portion in terms of the physical geography. Okay. With that being said, I'm gonna stop it right here and take off. So again, thank you everyone for listening to PLARHG history and geography. My name is Jonathan over here in Silicon at Wassa, and I'll see everyone on Thursday. Thank you.